Corporate finance practice problem using Excel. Exercise warrant gain versus common stock gain. Get ready. It's time to take our chance with corporate finance. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. If you have access to the Excel worksheet, would like to follow along, note that we're in the practice tab as opposed to the example tab. The example tab, in essence, being an answer key. Information on the left-hand side, we're going to populate that into the blue area on the right-hand side, looking at our warrants, considering what would happen if we exercise the warrants and comparing and contrasting the gain that would be there versus purchasing of the stock for a similar price. So let's see our information. The warrant, we're going to say purchased number of warrants, 75 warrants. We got multiple warrants. Going to say a year ago. The cost per warrant is going to be $28 to purchase the warrant. The exercise price, the price that we would have to exercise the warrant and purchase each share for $35. And the number of shares can be purchased with one warrant. Let's put an S there. Is going to be 2. So meaning one warrant means we can purchase 2 shares at the exercise price of the $35. So the market price is going to be the $48 at the start of this. And we're going to assume then that the warrants expire at this day, some point in the future. We would like 1 year later. We would like to exercise them. So we're going to exercise the warrants. We could just basically hold on to them or sell the warrants. Possibly we want to exercise the warrants at that point in time. There's no speculation premium left on the warrants, and the current stock price is going to be $58 at that point 1 year later when we want to exercise them. So the intrinsic value, let's start off with the intrinsic value here. That's going to be the market stock price. So let's pick up and this is at the beginning. We're going to say the market price is $48, comparing that then to the exercise price, which is, let's call that cost per warrant exercise price. It's going to be the $35. Underline in that, font group and underline. That's going to give us our intrinsic value, or that's going to give us our difference. Let's say difference, which is going to be equal to the 48 minus 35. And then the fact that we can get 2 warrants, we got 2 stocks per warrant. Number of shares can purchase per warrant is going to be 2. So I'm going to underline that, font group and underline, and that's going to give us our intrinsic value. Intrinsic value, it's going to be the $13 times the 2, or $26 for the intrinsic value. Then there's a speculation premium. The speculative premium is going to be the cost per warrant. Cost per warrant of $28 is how much it costs us to have the warrant. And then there's a benefit of the warrant that's currently at the $26. So we have a difference there, which is the speculative premium of 28 minus 26. So in other words, if we were to buy the warrants and exercise them directly, we'd get that intrinsic benefit of the $26, but we're paying $28 for them, so we would be down $2 if we exercise them right after we purchase them at this point in time. We're going to wait on that and wait till a year later when the stock in our scenario went up to $58. Let's calculate the profit if invested in stock. So we're going to assume or think about, what if we took that money and invested it in stock and compare that to the exercise price or the investment in the warrants that we're going to exercise a year later. So if we invested in stock, the investment amount that we can put in is going to be, note, we bought 75 warrants at a cost of $28. So if we were to have taken that same amount and paid for stock, it would be 75 warrants times the cost per warrant of $28. That would be the 2,100. And if we would have put them into the stocks, then instead of buying the warrants, we'd have the cost per share, market price or cost per share is going to be 48. Let's put that the cost. Cost per share, if we purchased it at the same point, $48. Let's go ahead and underline that by going to the font group and underline. That's going to give us then our number of shares that we could have purchased. Number of shares that we could have purchased. I'm going to indent that just to make it stand out a little bit. We're going to say this is going to be the 2,100 divided by the 48 shares. We could purchase about 44 shares then. Going to make this a little bit larger. Obviously, there's rounding here because it's not a perfect scenario. We're kind of trying to compare and contrast what we could have done between the two. You can't purchase. In other words, a partial share. So there is a bit of an estimate with regards to the rounding there. We've got the sales price per share. The sales price per share is going to be 58. It went up to $58. And if we compare that to the cost per share, the cost per share of the $48, that means on a per share basis, let's underline that, we're going to have a gain per share if we were to sell them this year later at 58 minus 48 or 10. Let's indent that just to make it a little nice alignment and indent. And that's going to give us our profit if invested in stock. So if we took our money and had invested it in stock, we would have about 43.75 shares times the gain per share, which would be the 438. Let's add a couple decimals there. Let's add some underline here with the 10, font group and underline. We're at the 437. If we look at the percent gain, the return then, we're going to say the profit here of the 437.50, adding some decimals, number group, couple decimals there, and compare that to the original investment, which was the 2,100, underlining that font group and underline. That would give us our rate of return, which would be equal to the 437.50 divided by the 2,100, making that a percent. Number group, percentifying it, adding a couple decimal, we're at the 20.83. So now let's consider the warrants and see what would happen with the warrants if we then exercise them a year later. So the warrant investment, we had the number of warrants that we purchased, which were 75, and the cost per warrant was $28. Cost per warrant to 28. That's going to give us our same investment amount. Font group underline. That's the warrant investment. Warrant investment, which was equal to the 75 times the 28. Same amount we got down here. So we're taking the same dollar amount this time instead of comparing like one warrant to one stock, which has different dollar amounts, which we can compare the percentage increase in. This time we have the same dollar amount, purchasing an uneven amount of warrants versus stock, given the fact that, of course, warrants are less costly than the stocks. So that's going to give us our exercise value. So we're going to take the number of warrants, which is 75. We can buy stocks for them, the shares per warrant, which are 2 shares per warrant. So that means we have shares that we can get. We're going to go to the font group, underline. Let's indent this just to make it a little bit nicer. Alignment, indent. That would be 75 warrants times 2 shares per warrant, or 150. The current stock price is at the $58 versus the exercise price, which I can pick up over here. The exercise price is at $35. So that the difference between those two is our benefit. So that's going to be the difference, I'll call it. I'm going to indent that by going to the alignment indent. That's going to be the 58, which is the current price minus what we can exercise for. The 35 means we got the value of the 23. Font group and underline that. That's going to be our exercise value, which will be equal to the 150 times the 23. So once again, we had the number of shares, 75 warrants times 2, number of shares, 150. The benefit we have here, the current market price is at $58, but we get to buy them at $35. So we got a $23 benefit in essence times the 150 shares. That's going to be our 3,450. So 3,450, let's calculate the percent return on the warrants. So we've got the exercise value here. And this exercise has too many E's. Let's get an E out of there. It might be misspelled other ways too, but let's pick that one up. And then we're going to say then the investment amount, the warrant investment that we put in We invested in the warrants, the 2,100. That's how much we bought the warrants for. So we have a gain then. Gain, which is equal to the 3,450 minus the 2001. Underline that font group and underline. That's going to give us a total dollar gain of the 1,350, which you can see is greater than the profit. This is misspelled. Profit. Pardon the spelling. So there's going to be, so we could see that, and we can get the percent change. Now note, this is a little bit different than a prior problem where we compared just buying one stock to one warrant, which of course you can then compare on a percentage basis, but it's not reflected in the dollar amount given the fact that you paid different dollar amounts for the stock versus the warrant. Whereas here, if you compare the same dollar amount that you would purchase for the stock to the same dollar amount that you can purchase for the warrant, you can do those two kind of comparisons. So if we compare that to the warrant investment of the 2,100, underline that font group and underline, that's going to give us our return on the warrants, which is going to be equal to the 1,350 divided by the 2,100. Let's go ahead and number group percentify that, add a couple decimals on it. So we've got a greater percentage increase, of course, here on the warrants as well versus the stock, in part due to the fact that you kind of have that leveraging effect with regards to the warrants.